Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Please remember to mute yourself whenever you're not speaking. All slides and links, as we always do, from this webinar will be sent out along with other recordings and PowerPoint presentations and resources in the July edition of the Light Center PD2Go newsletter. Today's How to Series webinar will discuss how to incorporate EdTech tools in your session. So this is going to be really, really interesting. By using many different methods to deliver live sessions, instructors can take advantage of technology tools to enhance student engagement in their classrooms. Edutainment combines education with entertainment to make learning fun. This session will introduce attendees to some of the technology tools they can bring to their classroom. This afternoon, Professor Thomas Santamaria will be facilitating this session. So thank you so much, Professor Santamaria, for helping us facilitate this workshop, and you can get started. The floor is yours.
Good morning, all. Welcome. Thank you very much, Professor. I'm happy to join you again this morning. We were just at this last week, and we did the first part of this webinar series, which was the why. And we really went through all the theories as to why bringing in technology really helps enhance our teaching. So this is the second part of it that helps us kind of take a look at some of the tools that are at our fingertips. And I'm going to ask everybody to think about a question and think about their teaching experience or their education experience, and kind of start putting in the chat maybe some of the technologies you might have used in some of your classrooms, maybe to enhance your teaching. And as we get to the end of the presentation, I might ask you to kind of speak to them a little bit if they're unfamiliar to the group. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So my agenda this morning is hopefully about 45-50 minutes to get through all this. A couple of topics: what's in your toolbox, as Professor Lynn had said, edutainment, gamification, and then we're going to jump into some examples and some games. I build a couple just to kind of give you some experience and some exposure to what they can do when they're set up. So. Before we get started with that, I wanted to take this time because one of the other ways we can use technology to enhance our teaching is by leveraging our own tool, which is our GAP, our learning management system. So I wanted to kind of talk about a few of the really just out there, bang, right in your eyes, right on the format, right on the homepage, some of the things that you can do as an instructor to help enhance the teaching and the experience that students have with you as an instructor. So I'm going to go through a really quick demonstration on a course homepage changes, announcements, how you can leverage announcements, use a social forum, and talk briefly about a video biography. And I've got I thought I still had it open. I'll have to reopen it. Let's go ahead and get started. So on your course homepage, when you log into your GAP homepage, you typically will see the course name, the course ID, when you're meeting, the times, and the dates, and the information associated with your email and stuff. One of the things that most instructors don't know is we set this up automatically through IT, but instructors have the power to edit this course homepage and customize it for their own liking. In my particular case, when I was teaching, I always like to put a picture of myself on my course homepage. So when students first see the experience of their course, they get to see not only my name, but who I am and what I look like. It's not required by the company, but it's a good practice because sometimes you may not see your students for the first time until like maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, depending on when your meeting time is. So we really want to get the students off on the right foot, getting to know their instructors. And obviously students, the more they take courses, the more they get to know the instructors. But that's kind of one of the nice additions that you can add to the classroom. The other thing that we can do is you can add announcements, typically weekly announcements, or if something comes up and says, hey, get ready for class, this is what we're going to do today. Reminder, class is in session. Now, I will say that in the past, we haven't really leveraged and used announcements. Some instructors do, some don't. We'd really like to encourage instructors as a best practice to post announcements. One of the things I personally like to do is I like to post a weekly announcement, even though the activities are in the weekly content. I just like to post announcements, say, hey class, welcome to week 1, week 2, week 3. This is where we're headed this week. This is what's going to be due. This is when we're going to do our live session. Maybe this is some of the things you can look at to prepare for it. So they don't have to be long. They don't have to be, super lengthy or explanatory, just an announcement to get students started. The challenge you face is, again, we haven't typically used them at Westcliff as a standard, but it's a nice thing to add. And Professor Leroux, you had your hand up. You have a question?
Oh, can you just walk us through really quick how you get in there and change that?
Absolutely. That's what I was going to do. So if you can give me 1 second here, I'm going to close that screen. That's our games. Let me go to the next slide because let me run through the screenshots I have first, and then I'll go into a demonstration and show you how to do it. So the first thing you'll see when you log into your course as an instructor, you should see this right underneath your name. You need to turn editing on. Okay. Then you go to click, you should see a set of options to click on edit in each one of the sections, but on the main homepage section, you want to click on edit. So when editing is off, this won't be visible. When editing is on, this will be visible. And then once you go in to edit, you will see that you can now edit, you can then input information into the course homepage. So let me do a quick demonstration of that. I did have that open. I just needed to bring it over here. Sorry, I got 3 screens running here, so I apologize. Bounce this around a little bit. Second here. Too many things open. All right, I'm going to bring up the CS 612. Fall 2. I think this was 612, I thought. All right, so you guys can see my screen. I have now opened my GAP page. You guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so now I am in, this is a class I taught back in the fall, software test and automation. So I go to turn editing on, and then I go to edit, and I go to edit section. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can either, you can put announcements. Some instructors, I saw Professor Crow and other instructors do some tables about some information they provide to students. But this is where the instructors can really personalize their homepage and make it, inviting to their students. One big caveat: don't change the information, the meeting date, time, location, email, stuff like that, but just kind of add additional information into your class. And then what I'm going to do is show you something here real quick. Let's see if I go to. So wherever you have your pictures, if you want to do a picture, I typically have a couple of pictures I use for work that I can kind of just upload. And this is either simple drop and drag, or you can click on this icon to insert or edit an image. Typically, myself, I just like to kind of drag and drop it, which Moodle will take. See if I can find one of me. So I'm just going to drag this from another screen, and you can see I'm just dragging it over, and I'm going to paste it right in there. Obviously, it comes in very, very big, but you can kind of shrink it here. The handles are on it. Oh, that one was too big. You got to play around with the image sometimes because it'll be a little bit bigger than what you want. See if I can drag it right down there. Yeah, see, that's why to insert it isn't bad, because then you could just size it differently, and you should be able to size the image itself. My sizing isn't worked there, but you can see the image is posted in there. If you did the insert, you can do an insert edit image here. Play around with it, play around where you want it to be positioned, play around with how big you want it to look. Like I said, you can also add in a different, another thing, maybe down below here underneath my email. Welcome class, whatever. Looking forward to teaching you this time, or looking forward to working with you. If you have some specific requirements of your class, you may want to put that information in there. And then once you're done, you just save your changes, and then you have a picture on your homepage. Now, I do know that there's some requirements or sort of move a foot for instructors to offer open office hours. Sorry, coming a little tough this morning. Office hours can also be posted here with the Zoom link if you wanted to set up and schedule office hours. Again, you would go to edit and say, let's say down here, my open office hours are. And then you can add your own instructions if you want them to book an appointment or email you to say, hey, can we meet in your open office? Or you can post your Zoom link in this off your account, not the one from the class, but your own personal Zoom room to meet with students in your own office hours. So whatever you kind of want to put in here is your prerogative. Don't make it too long or too busy, but this is how you do it. And then you could save changes. Like I said, on my announcements in my class, you can see welcome to week 8. Well, you know, I kind of did a welcome email each week, and let's just take a look at what one of these would look like. So, and I just kind of copied it from the syllabus. Welcome to the class this week, what we're doing, where we're headed, what we're going to be talking about. A couple of the weeks I had like a pre-assignment for them to research, you know, to prepare for that week's lecture. That way I wasn't on the hook for everything, and that helped with the student participation. And you could use these throughout. Just make sure you, if you're going to use announcements, remind the students in your sessions that that you are using announcements. Okay, and that's how you do it. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. Any questions on how to change the course homepage so you can add a picture or some own personal information? Remember, again, the solid rule is please don't change the meeting date, the time, the location. Professor, if we get your professor name wrong or you want to go under a different name, you can change your professor name, and the email addresses should be correct. Sometimes we get them wrong because our Active Directory isn't set up correctly, or the email address is different than what we have in the list. So, questions? I got the chat up, so let me bring up the chat. And Zoom on your computer and schedule a meeting. Yep, as Professor Sorensen said, when you do want to have open office hours, if they're like 6 to 8 a.m. or p.m. or whatever, as she said, open up your Zoom room for those hours, and you can go ahead and just sit in your Zoom room. If somebody shows up, that's great. If not, you can continue working on grading and some of the other things in class prep and stuff like that. So program chairs and deans are really working to educate and help their instructors how to leverage that and set up their open office hours and what to do with them. So. Anybody else have anything to add to that? Questions before we go on? All right. So let's talk about how we can really incorporate technology in your teaching. This is something I kind of crafted when kind of corny, maybe it's a little bit 80s and 90s kind of thinking, but I'm a computer science, guy, and I did everything about computer science. But every topic, every subject, every career, every field has a core set of key concepts, terms, or items that they just absolutely have to memorize, whether it's in healthcare, knowing what a standard blood pressure check rate should be, or whether a standard office visit is coded as 99211, those kind of things. Is that when students learn and they go out to an interview, the interviewee or the interviewer is going to know some of the core things that they want that person to know and just rattle off by memory. And that's going to kind of set the stage for the rest of the interview. So every course, every subject we teach has a unique set of key terms or concepts that if they take nothing else out of the course, they memorize that. And the way we do that is by repetition, repetition, repetition. The more they hear it, the more they see it, the more they're going to commit it to memory. Things like logical operators and order of precedence. What's a decision statement or a repetition statement? Or what is the universe database mapping techniques, things like that. I know I'm computer science quoting, but if you can relate that even to a business class or an accounting class or an education class, every subject, every technique we use has a core set of concepts that students should really just work hard to memorize so that when they go into an interview or into a job, they can have confidence that they have something to start with before they get tripped up with maybe a trick question or something like that. So I don't know if anybody else uses it. Put your hand up if you guys have heard of this concept before. Or you guys kind of use this type of a teaching technique in your class. It doesn't have to be something called what's in your toolbox. I like it because I think of the toolbox as like a carpenter or an electrician or something like that. They got the pliers, they got the hammers, they got the things like that. It's just the basic tools they need to be successful in their career and in their course. So. And then we're going to talk a little bit. I've got a really cool, fun Jeopardy PowerPoint template that's out there that you can use. It's free to use. WordWall. Professor Emerine was in the session last week, and he uses WordWall. And then the question for the group is, what are others using? Okay. And as Professor Evelyn had said, we talk a lot, and this is really education and entertainment. This term kind of came around the turn of the century, the 2000s, but it's really taken off especially in the years where we hit the pandemic. I mean, it's becoming more and more of an item to be able to help keep learners engaged, because in an online environment, when we're all doing online, it's easy to get distracted, it's easy to get bored, and students learn so much differently today than they did in 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. So we had to find ways to be creative to keep them engaged, to keep them entertained, and have them have fun with the class. Products such as videos or software or other entertainment medium used to accomplish it. Some of the edutainment resources that are out there are products called Vox, Crash Course, TED Ed. I don't know how many people are familiar with TED Talks. How many people have used TED Talks in their classes? I mean, they're a great way, and it's entertainment. It's really entertainment that can be used for teaching. And it's not something you have to build. I mean, you can go to the TED Talks and you're like, oh, I'm teaching a class on the Sarbanes-Act or something like that. And you can go out there and find a TED Talk and spend, some of them are 2-3 minutes long, run the video and then ask some questions, send your class into great breakout rooms and say, hey, discuss this video and what you take out of it and what you can bring back to the class of what we learned this week. So the cool thing about edutainment, it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be something that you personally build. You can leverage the resources by obviously giving appropriate credit to them and import them and bring them into your classroom and your lecture time. Okay? Question for the group. Anybody have an example of some edutainment or something that they've used? I know Professor Adeyemi, you mentioned using a TED Talk. Can you give an example of a TED Talk you have used recently in your class?
The TED Talk that I've used was in the past, and it was focused around communication styles and the speakers in TED Talk, the way they compose themselves. And even when they went through some technology issues, they were able to bypass those issues and kept the audience engaged.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, sir. And Professor Sabatu had said that we do have clips from some TED Talks in some of the syllabuses. Some of them don't. Professor Omarine, go ahead and open the mic. The floor is yours to go ahead and share your experience.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this lecture. I want to say to use TED Ed. It is maybe it is not the right videos that we want to use in the session time. Why? You already giving a lecture, you already reading your lecture, and you want to bring another one who want to read the same way, who's using the same way. So I prefer, maybe you can give us at a homework, but during the lecture you have to give some videos with some effects, with some actions, with some colors, with some animations, with some things like that. So to avoid the regular lecture. So yes, TED is very nice. I like it. I am using it, but I'm not prepared to use it during the lecture. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know Professor Gannon had posted things like TED Talks, Play Posted, Kahoots. We're going to talk about a little bit about Kahoot here today. We've seen Kahoot a lot. We've done a lot, some of it in our own company for our own like faculty development types things and stuff like that. Yeah, Simon Sinek is really big. He's an inspirational leader, kind of like he's got a lot of books out, you know, on leadership. Actually, in my last university, we did what we called a book club. We would have a book club where we get together and all the leaders would pick a book and we, you know, read chapters each week and we discuss what those chapters mean to us from leadership or other perspectives. So that's one suggestion, Professor Evelyn, about maybe going future, maybe a book club for faculty and faculty development if people were interested. I know we do a lot as it is, but book clubs are kind of fun. I mean, if you like to read and stuff. But Gapminder, Professor Sorensen, Dr. Sorensen had said, yeah. Gapminder and Dr. Johnson indicates, yeah, they need to be short. You don't want to have, obviously it can't consume the entire class, not 15, 20 minutes. 1, 2 minutes, 3 minutes max on these. And you could take a TED Talk and you can prep it to where maybe the part of the TED Talk that you want to present to the class is like 5 minutes in or 10 minutes in. Don't watch the first 5 or 10 minutes. Cue the TED Talk up to where it actually starts, where you want that 1 or 2 minute clip. And then stop it when you get to that endpoint. So there's a lot of different ways that you can craft these tools, and TED Talks and Tech Ed is just one of them that can really kind of help leverage and manage your classes. And as Professor Amarine said, you don't want them to be the crutch to your teaching. You want them to enhance your teaching. You want them to enhance a concept that gets the students thinking about what they're learning and then put it into practice. That's where you can send them into the breakout rooms, have them talk about it in small groups of 2 or 3, 4 students, and then they come back and they debrief the entire class about what they discussed. So, anybody else have any thoughts or comments on edutainment or some of the things that they have used? Professor Evelyn, anything to add from your perspective of what you see on the Light Center side on edutainment? Or?
Well, actually, from the Light Center, we observe classes, and I have seen faculty, especially from the College of Business, using technology really effectively. And the only advice that I would give that they're amazing. I mean, technology is the resource. It's not the end goal. It is important to use technology for learning purposes. Sometimes we have also observed faculty that they want to introduce technology, but the whole class becomes about how to use the technology. So there is no learning purpose at the end. And this is something very important. The technology is the means for learning, but it's not the end goal of the session.
Right, and you're absolutely right. And you hit on a very, very important fact there is that it can't be a crutch. It shouldn't be a crutch. And there has to be a good balance. If you're not comfortable with it and it doesn't work, it's just you're gonna miss the message. So there's a balance between what technology you bring in, and it all depends on your comfort level with the technology as a teacher, as an instructor. One of the things I mentioned last week in our session about the why is to practice this, and it's really probably more applicable in the how, is that when you're going to use this technology, practice it before you go into your live lecture. Make sure it works. Go into your room a little bit early, do a dry run, take a look at it and have it timed out. Even then, as we all know, you get into your lectures and things just don't go according to plan. So you've got to be prepared for a plan B. So make sure that you have tested it, make sure you practice it, make sure that you're comfortable with that technology and using that technology. Don't go out there and put in a whole big, huge Kahoot project or a game and not know how to use Kahoot. It's just really important that you are comfortable with the technology and have practice with what you're using. And I'm going to be honest with you today, as we go through a couple of the examples that I have put together, and Professor Omarine turned me on to WordWall. I'm probably going to ask him to demonstrate what he uses some WordWall for, because I built one. But again, I had just started with WordWall last week and putting together a couple of examples. And I would tell you in my class presentation, I probably wouldn't be comfortable enough with the platform to actually use it in a first lecture until I had more practice with it. And I'm a technology guy. I mean, I put it together. It seemed like it worked okay. The scores looked like they worked, but there's a lot more that goes into using these than just running it in your classroom. So any other last comments? Thank you everybody for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and move on then. Continue to put your comments, your questions, your thoughts into the chat. I really do appreciate everybody participating. Remember that a comment you share in the chat could benefit another attendee. So any ideas that you have, any thoughts you have on how to, use technology for teaching, whether it's edutainment, whatever tool we use, whether it's a GAP or an LMS tool or teaching technique that you use to enhance the classroom teaching, please share that with the group. Okay? All right, gamification is actually a little bit different than edutainment. Edutainment kind of is more geared around stuff that's already pre-built, like we talked about YouTube videos, TED Talks, things like that. They can expand into some other techniques, but gamification is really where we start to talk about the Kahoot and the word wall and some of these other tools that allows you to build and bring gaming into your classroom teaching. And again, this has kind of really taken off since primarily the pandemic, probably around the 2010s, mid-2005s. It really started to talk a little bit about gaming because right after we hit the turn of the century, all the kids were growing up with, technology in their hands, with gaming consoles in their hands. They're on Discord, they're on MindTap or whatever, they're on Minecraft, all of these kind of things that are out there. And we as older educators weren't necessarily born and raised on that kind of technology or that kind of education or entertainment. So we've got to kind of go to where our students are, and our students are into gaming. Most, some of them, not all of them, but gamification is really a purpose built in to increase their engagement, keep them actively engaged, not getting bored. As you guys know, a lot of our students have a pretty short attention span, some of them, and sometimes they get distracted easily, especially when we're doing online lectures. And all we're doing is running through PowerPoint presentations like this, or just talking ad nauseum like this. But you know, gamification allows us to bring in fun, but it also allows for learning. It often uses a series of goals, levels, rules. You get badges and things like that. You can do story elements. You can kind of have maybe an accounting class that takes students through a story of a firm or a business, that like a donut shop, on how to do books and all those kind of fun things. So it'll allow you to kind of bring some of the techniques of teaching and the outcomes. And the funny thing, the cool thing about gamification is students learn and they don't realize they're learning. See, there was a comment in there from the Light Center. The question is, when you say how much time does it take you approximately, and Professor Evelyn, what do you mean by how much time? How much time does it take to build, or how much time should you allot for it in the class?
No, it's just that Professor Sorensen was talking about how she creates tutorials for her students, which I believe is a great idea. But I know that some of us might think, okay, when? If I'm already teaching so many hours, I just wanted to see, okay, she says that around 10 minutes. And sometimes we don't use technology because we're afraid of, you know, like, because of time constraints. And sometimes, yeah, it only takes 10 minutes and you can use it all over again, over and over again.
Absolutely. And I apologize, I missed that in the chat. I was on the other screen. So thank you for clarifying that. And thank you for sharing, Professor Sorensen. Professor Sorensen, do you want to unmute and just kind of give 1 or 2 minutes about how you would kind of, you know, guide or help instructors to kind of think about preparing for this? I know you said 10 minutes top. How can they prepare and include that as part of their prep for their sessions?
Oh, well, so I found that there was one time I spent an hour answering student questions in class about an assignment, and it was just a colossal waste of the very precious resources that we have. And so I started creating these tutorials. Now, I mean, obviously I spend 10 minutes tops for a course that I've taught multiple times, and I know the assignments in and out, right? So what I'll do is I'll just pop up the instructions, or I'll make a quick PowerPoint of all the different things that I know that students struggle with in the assignment. I'll lay out, you know, like maybe some tips on how to begin, or some things to think about, some resources that they might want to consider, and then like my expectations, so that they know, like, you know, when I'm grading this, like, what am I going to be looking for? I'll always show them the rubric, because they often don't ever look at that. Yeah, and I just kind of do like a Zoom recording, and then I actually have a YouTube channel that I load them all up to. So I just link up the YouTube in my thing. And so when a student asks me about it in class, I just refer them to the tutorial, and I'm happy to answer questions after they've watched the tutorial.
So thank you very much for sharing. Anybody have any questions in regards to that? And Professor Sorensen, if you can, in the chat, put a couple of the tools that you're familiar with when you do these. Everybody thinks, well, I got to do these in Zoom. You don't have to do them in Zoom. I know Professor Sorensen is really good. She likes using Screencast-O-Matic. There's Screencast-O-Matic out there, and there's Loom that you can just capture quick videos. And maybe as a follow-up to this particular seminar, Professor Evelyn, maybe consider having Jocelyn, Professor Sorensen, do something, just 5 or 10 minutes on how to record a couple of these in Loom or another software, and then open and start their own YouTube channel and use. I agree with you. I do a lot of these things. Zoom isn't always necessarily the best platform to use to get these really short, to the point, easy to do videos. So some of these other techniques and tools would really be helpful to our instructors to save them some time. So you want to share that with the group here, Professor Sorensen? And Professor Amarine, you have your hand up. Go ahead, ask your question, sir.
Thank you. No, I want to just say thank you, Light Center, for this book. This spoke. They have some tutorial things, some they offering some tools, something that I benefit from that. So thank you. You can benefit from that in our lecture too.
Awesome, thank you. Professor Evelyn, do you think that sounds like a good idea? Maybe we can kind of, I know Professor Sorensen is not at her computer right now, but Professor Sorensen, when you get a chance, go ahead. And if you can send that link maybe to the Light Center, Professor Evelyn.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we can include that with the presentation. Like I said, I think as we continue this talk, obviously there's much, much more to this than just this presentation. And what this presentation really does is hopefully gets everybody thinking about what the possibilities are. You know, think about what the potential is. Think about where your strong suits are or what you're familiar with. If you have kids, like I said, how many people knew that Minecraft actually had an education edition rather than just a Minecraft game? How many people are familiar with Discord? Anybody familiar with Discord? Discord is a gaming platform where, surprisingly, if you want to look for a student, go to Discord. They're probably on Discord looking for something or playing a game. It's like, hey, I noticed you haven't been in class for the past 6 weeks. You know, you got to get off Discord a little bit more and get back into classroom. But even Discord has an an educational platform. So I was actually surprised. I looked at the Minecraft Education Edition. It was actually quite interesting. A little bit more geared towards K through 12, but I'd have to look a little bit deeper to see where its implications could be in higher education. How about ARC e-learning? This was just from the list of, there's some references at the end of the presentation on this list. ARC e-learning is one, when you look for a search on the internet for, you know, the most popular tools, Archie was on that list. Elucidot, I was familiar with, haven't really used Elucidot a lot, but I am familiar with it. I've heard of it. I don't know of any institutions particularly using it, but anything that's, anybody familiar add one to the list that's not on here that they have used before? And you're right, Professor Sabatu, you're absolutely right. Some of these tools lend themselves better to some disciplines versus others. And yeah, some of them, you can't fit a round peg into a square hole. So really make sure that you're picking the tool that's appropriate for your discipline. You know, Peer Deck, Padlet, Poll Everywhere. Yeah, I've used Poll Everywhere before. I like that one. Kahoot seems to be one of the more popular ones, but you know, I don't know. To be honest, I've done a lot of Kahoot, and sometimes don't take this the wrong way. It's disrespectful. Sometimes it just gets old. It just gets a little mundane and routine. So, I mean, Kahoot can be, that's why you want to mix them up. That's why you want to, again, have these in your toolbox, because you want to use different tools for different, you know, different capabilities, different disciplines, different outcomes and things like that. So, all right. That's anything. Anybody else have anything to add? Anybody want to unmute and offer anything that we might have missed? Professor DeVito says Kahoot Premium Edition. I don't know. There are probably some of these. If you do the free edition, you get some basic tools. If you do the standard edition, some of them it costs a little bit, whether it's a one-time fee for use of software. Sometimes they have a monthly fee. That's one of the things I learned with WordWall. You can get a free version and you can build a certain amount of boards, certain amount of games. Others that you have a monthly fee to use them. Google Earth, yeah. Dr. Broding, Google Earth and Virtual Museum exhibits for history classes or geography classes. Dr. Broding, do you want to talk about how you use Google Earth in some of the general education or integrated studies courses?
Sure. So for the art class, well, art appreciation class, art history class that we have, one of the components that for one of their projects is that they have to put together a virtual like tour in Google Earth, but there's also like a lot of pre-programmed tours that they can go on, like I don't know, the highlights of Venice or Rome, right? So it's a really easy way for them to be able to get in there and see you know, close up what things look like and kind of experience it. And then virtual museum exhibits, there's a lot of museums that have like the VR feature, like if you hold your phone up to you know, like a QR code, it can do something. And there are some that have like virtual options or in a museum app. I think there's just a lot of ways, if you just even look in apps for whatever the subject matter you're teaching is, there's a lot of options out there for ways that you can get your students involved that are like way beyond anything we've even scratched the surface of here.
Yeah, and that brought up a very good point. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Broding, but I'm not sure how much you're aware. Smithsonian, don't forget the government resources. Smithsonian Institute and all the museums connected to the Smithsonian Institute has virtual stuff that they recorded from there. Same thing with the Library of Congress. Don't sell short some of the governmental resources that are available and some of the capabilities that they put in place for the children to learn. There's Smithsonian virtual, there's a Library of Congress virtual. I'm not sure, how that, there could be some of them for those that teach in, well, we have healthcare course, we have health informatics. So virtual medical tours with, places like UCLA Medical Center, some of the big, huge medical facilities have virtual tours, a lot of free resources out there to really enhance your class content. And I do like going back to Professor Sabatu's comment about make sure the technique and the tool really fits the discipline. Pick something appropriate for the discipline. Professor Evelyn, what the professor, the Merlot org, what is that?
It's actually a system where you have curated online learning and support materials.
Oh, okay.
And so many universities they publish their open access resources there, and you can totally use them. It's really, really good. You get ebooks, you get even quizzes and online activities, and yeah, and it's for free.
Awesome, thank you very much. Wonder if that would lend itself well in Professor Constance's arena of maybe even enhancing the EDD type aspect of research for the EDD side of it. The doctorate in education, just something to think about. But all right, well, thank you very much for sharing. Any other last comments before we move on? Okay. Let's see if this plays. I don't know if you could hear that well enough, but anybody remember the clip from War Games back in 1983 with Matthew Broderick? Shall we plays a war game with the Whopper system out of, sorry, I'm dating myself now. Anyway, it was a really cool statement about shall we play a game? He breaks into the computer and basically got into a gaming aspect of the computer because they use gaming a lot in artificial intelligence. That's how they get it to learn. So they use gaming and computer simulations to help do that. All right, and this is where Professor Emerine, I'm going to tag team with you, and I'm going to do a demonstration of WordWall and how we use it. And I'm going to kind of switch this over a little bit, and I'm going to move this over because this is my WordWall screen. Everybody can see my screen in my internet browser here. So this is WordWall, and it's just wordwall.com. Oh, sorry, do this. And this is what the home page looks like. You go in here, you build yourself a free account. You can upgrade it if you want. It's as easy. I tell you something, Professor Emerine, it took like 5 minutes to build my first one. Now, it took a little bit longer to kind of get it to work what I wanted to work. And the biggest thing, my biggest learning curve on WordWall is kind of playing around with each one of these to see which one kind of fits the outcome better, or which one works really well. And I'm gonna go through my demonstration here real quick, and then I'm going to turn the screen over to you. And if you can share your screen and show what you have showed last week, something simple, but something that you use in class. But these are all the templates that you can use. So if you wanted to do a matchup of key terms, kind of like what's in your toolbox kind of concept, you click on matchup. Then it has some really cool templates you could use that are already pre-built with some color format and things like that. You can do pictures. You can add pictures to it if you wanted to do graphics where you got emoticons and things like that. My first one out the gate, I just picked create with this template, which was just a blank template. And then you just kind of build it. Keyword definition, keyword definition, keyword definition. So some of these are very, very simple to build. Professor Emerine, what would you say yours take to build? 5-10 minutes at max, right? Give or take at best. Some of these are very, very easy to build. Well, let's take a look at mine. How many people know math? I know math very well. How many people know math? So this is going to be your one. So this is a really quick matchup game on mathematical operators in order of precedence. One of the first things you'll learn about math, right? So let's give this a go. Oops, sorry, that was the wrong one. All right, stop it. There it is. Let's close that one. I didn't want that one. Sorry, that was the wrong one I was using. Let's go this way. I had 2 or 3 screens open. I apologize. So this is the other one. You don't have to. There's music you can put in here in the background. So here's the go. So mathematical operators in order of precedence have an order in which the operation determines how that math equation is calculated. So what is the fifth mathematical operator precedence? Which one of these six is the fifth to be executed? Anybody want to put in the chat? Anybody know? Addition. Yep, you are correct. And it kind of gives you a little check mark. Do you want me to make a mistake? Let's see what happens when I make a mistake. What's third? Well, it's actually multiplication, but multiplication and division actually get calculated. They're equal in calculations if you have both. Sixth would be subtraction, but I'm going to put parentheses here. See, it gives you an error. Got that one wrong. So first is actually parentheses. Anybody remember the acronym we use for mathematical operators in order of precedence? Exponentiation is second. Subtraction is fourth. Oops, division is fourth, sorry. Subtraction is last. Yeah, thank you, Professor Adiemi. It's PEMDAS or BODMAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally for those that you like Nemo, what do they call them? The word association things, PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It kind of expands a little bit when you go beyond some of the other mathematical functions, such as you also have grouping, and grouping obviously takes precedence over parentheses, but we won't get into grouping. And that's it. At the end of the time, it gives you a time. You can look at the leaderboard. You can start it again. You can start it all over. But that's my simple use of how you can use Wonderwall to enhance, your particular lecture or your particular concepts. So Professor Amarine, are you ready? You want to share yours? Because you'll do something different than my math one. So
I have one very short one. It will help.
Let me stop share. Professor Evelyn, that's okay to stop share and have him join in? Yep.
Absolutely.
All right, go ahead, Professor Amarine, and then I'll take control back because I have one more thing to do. So.
Okay. Do you see my screen, guys?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay. So match the definition of any one of these. For example,
and this is for a math class?
this is for economics. So I will repeat it again. One moment, please. I make it a short one.
You're looking for a different one?
Yeah, no, I want to start again.
You wanted to restart it, okay. Economic, okay, this is an economics class.
Now, so you can match. I am randomly matching. So in this case, you are discussing the wrong answers with your students. So in this case, you will discussing the wrong answers with your students. So you will discussing the terms and definitions. And again, so it gives students to have the definitions. And then you move the next activity in your class.
Thank you. And I'm going to go back to the chat real quick here. And I think there was a question that says, is this something you can do? You assign this out of class? You normally use this in your lectures or in your live sessions? Can it be assigned out of class? I think it could. If you share the link with them. It's something we can look forward to, we can look into. I mean, you can give it to them maybe in an announcement. Professor Sorensen, post announcement said, hey, we're going to be learning about supply and demand of, in economics. Here's a really quick game per se to complete before we go to class. And then you could put that link into the announcement. And then, you can look at the results of that game when you get into your live session and, do a leaderboard or badges and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways you can leverage these tools. All right, last but not least, I'm going to do one more game. Everybody who's a fan of Jeopardy? Who likes Jeopardy? This is an actual Jeopardy template. Everybody can see my screen, right? Raise your hand, you can see my screen. I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow. I don't know if you'll be able to hear the music or not, but this is set up exactly like the Jeopardy. You build it, you have categories, you have numbers and stuff. So there's going to be a little bit of audience participation here. I'm sorry, that was on the wrong screen. Give me a second here. I got to switch my screens. Escape out of that one. On the slideshow. There we go. And then I got to do swap my presenter view. I said I've got 3 or 4 different screens that I operate off of. So you guys hear the music? Yeah. I can just click and we can go through the music and stuff. And then it's kind of cool. It does like the Jeopardy theme, does all the categories and stuff, and kind of brings them up. And here's our categories for today. And I'm going to do Alex Trebek. Tech terms. Pioneers. Languages. Networking. Security. And web. All right, Professor Bart, you said you pick languages. What would you like? What amount would you like languages for? 200. Okay. Apple. This is a tough one.
What is iOS?
That'll work. The only thing different about this is that you have to put in multiple answers, but I put languages. I wasn't supposed to be languages. I was supposed to be pioneers. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be languages. Apple was supposed to be iOS. You're right, Professor Lipo. So yeah, I must have got them out of order, but this was under pioneers. Did I click on pioneers by mistake? I might have clicked on pioneer. No, it was languages. It should have been under pioneers. All right, who's next? Pick a category and an amount. We'll only do a couple. We're not going to run through the whole game. Just anyone? Networking. What amount, Professor? $400. IP. What do you want to guess? Anybody buzzing in?
What is Internet Protocol?
What is Internet Protocol? Correct. Mr. Lipo gets a $400. Professor Lipo, pick the next clue.
Pioneers for 800.
Pioneers for 800. Oh, that's an easy one. Microsoft? Uh-oh.
Who is Bill Gates?
Who is Bill Gates? That is correct. Who is Bill Gates? Professor Evelyn, you want to take a shot at one?
I have never played this game, but I can say, languages for 400.
Oh, another word for coffee.
Java.
Oh, Professor Lipo's quick on the buzzer. What is Java?
That's okay.
What is Java? Yep. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of things. So we won't necessarily, unless you all want to go through the entire game, we can.
But can I say something before?
Yes.
Because it was a good thing that you asked me to participate. This is a wonderful game, and I can see lots of fun in it. But remember that we have international students from all over the world. I had never even heard of Jeopardy. So when you play the game, I saw languages and then Apple. I was like, oh, do I have to translate? I had no idea that had to do with the questions.
Yeah.
My point is that let's make sure that when we use this, we give instructions and we make sure that everyone knows what the game is about, because it's quite American, I can tell, because everyone knew about me.
What mistake did I make in building this today? I didn't consider the audience. Remember, I'm a computer tech guy. I'm doing this in a computer class. So when I say languages, it's probably computer languages, but you're right. It's just, you got to consider your discipline and your audience. And I apologize. I did not consider my audience in picking these categories. It's like languages. Well, okay,
that's perfect. But what I'm saying, Yeah, all I'm saying is that when we're planning our classes and we're introducing technology, it is important to keep in mind that our students come from all over the world. So let's play Jeopardy. What is Jeopardy about, for example? And then you explain the game. So we know, okay, I had no idea.
Yeah,
Rules of the
I had a
programming.
similar case. I actually brought a bingo game, an online bingo game, to my last class in business.
Oh,
And the same thing. Half of the students didn't know how to play bingo, which I thought was like a given. But I guess a lot of international students don't know games that we play here. So
the other thing, as the professor said, when they give response to students, also when they're new to English, they think in their own language and then they translate it into English.
yes,
So
you're
that
right.
doesn't come right, regardless of their level of education.
You're absolutely correct, Professor Spato, and I appreciate all the comments. Yeah, you just definitely have to make sure that it's geared to the audience, and the entire audience can understand it in their cultural background and can relate to it. I didn't even think about people not in other parts of the world not even knowing what Jeopardy is, but that's my naivety, so my naiveness. So, well, that's all I had for today, folks. Thank you very much for your time. Any last questions? Anybody want to say anything or comment or anything? Hope you had fun today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Professor Santamaria, for facilitating today's webinar. I left a link for your opinion on this session and future sessions that you want the Light Center to offer. One thing is that we don't have an invite for August, because in August we won't be holding any webinars. Instead, we're going to direct you to the YouTube channel, where we have lots of tutorials and lots of resources that we want to share with you. So we're doing this because it's summer, so we're going to just take a break on the webinars, but we will still be available if you need anything from the Light Center, especially from the Professional Development Department. So thanks everyone for attending today's webinar, and see you soon then.